Thank you for joining us again on the Marketing Rules podcast, and it's my pleasure to have Rob Green from Rectec on the as a guest today. Rob, it is a pleasure to have you on board. We've known each other for a few years now. We've been kind of trying to plan this for a little while, kind of on and off, a little kind of few false starts. But it's great to have you here. And for everyone who's watching on the video. If that's your office, it is pretty cool because there's a guitar, there's a dartboard, there's what looks like a pool table, and there's a big screen TV all in the background there.
It is my home office, and I think you've probably just heard the doorbell, so that's the disadvantage of working from home. Thank you so much for having me on the show, James. It has been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a while now, and thanks for the introduction as well. Yes, so Rob Green, founder of a company called Rectec. Rectec are empowering recruitment and talent acquisition leaders around the world to make smarter decisions about the technology they use. I have, just to give you a bit of background, I've personally worked in the recruitment and HR space for 16 years. I've worked in recruitment technology implementation for the last 10 years, and I've implemented no less than 100 applicant tracking systems, or managed no less than 100 applicant tracking system implementation projects, really frequently working with organizations that are looking for the right technology for their business and helping them through that process to identify what that technology looks like, and making sure that implementation is a complete success. That's a very quick summary of my background and what I do, but we can obviously uncover more throughout.
I mean, that was a perfect pitch. There you go. I couldn't have pitched that better myself. What is it that's kind of interests you about that space, right? Because obviously most people in recruitment are recruiters or kind of recruitment managers or something, but you've obviously kind of gone off in a slightly different direction around this whole kind of empowering businesses to understand the kind of right kinds of technology. Do you have kind of an inherent kind of interest in tech, or because most people might see this as, I'm not going to be, this is in no way is this kind of like, I'm about, it might see it's slightly boring, I mean, CRMs and ATSs are kind of like the kind of more boring end of the maybe of the Rectec space, but you kind of bring it to life. So where does your interest in this come from?
Well, my interest stems from, I'll just give you a little bit of background. I started life in agency recruitment back in 2006, working for Reed in both the UK and Australia. And after 4 or 5 years in the agency space, like most recruiters, as much as I loved that role, I was always interested in what life looks like on the other side of the fence. You're working with HR clients day in and day out, and you're supporting them with that process. But I really wanted to see, look, I'm great at making money for a recruitment agency business, but what am I like at saving money? And I really wanted to see, to get that experience. So I went to work for an organization called Huawei. They're a big Chinese telecoms firm, and I looked after all of their recruitment across the UK and Ireland. And on the first day that I joined that business, they had 190 live vacancies all being managed on Excel spreadsheets. Wow. So there was an interest in implementing some technology straight away, coming from an agency background and using technology every day to support those client and candidate relationships and to help me in my role. It seemed inevitable that we were going to need to implement something. So I put together a business case. I pitched it to the HR director, and I was quickly assigned a budget and told to manage the project. And I'd never done that before. My background really was in recruitment, and I saw it as a challenge. I really wanted to make it successful. Fast forward 12 months, I'd implemented a solution across Europe and didn't really want to go back to recruiting. I saw the value that recruitment technology can add to an organization like Huawei, for example. And, for me, that was really valuable, just seeing the value that solution that I'd gone out there and found and implemented. And, I trained all of the hiring managers and wrote all of the documentation and configured the solution. And I'd seen the value that had come from that. And I really just wanted to do that again. And I guess I kind of had a couple of choices at that point in time. I could either go and find another organization like Huawei, maybe go through that process again, or I could go and work in the RPO space. And I was fortunate enough to find a role as a technology consultant working for Capita Resourcing, specifically looking after all of their ATS implementations for all of their RPO customers. And that really was a a really valuable experience working with lots of different enterprises and lots of public sector organizations, and also getting to work with lots of different technology solution providers in the market as well, and really learning about what the market has to offer.
So I guess Rectec, which is a bit like kind of a go compare, right, for kind of recruitment technology, that came just basically because you were kind of doing a bit of that anyway, right? When you were kind of implementing this, you were going around the market, having to kind of look what was working, what wasn't working, what worked for you, what was best for the business, and all these other kind of, I'm sure you had matrices of kind of comparisons, right, on how to what makes a good kind of ATS. I mean, is that basically as kind of simple as it was? It was like, well, there's something here. There's nothing already available. Let's help people kind of compare what's on the market.
So for me, it really came from having an experience of working with lots of different organizations and really understanding how different their organizations were and how different their requirements were when it came to actually finding some recruitment tech. And I actually came up with this idea. So after Capita, I went to work for an ATS provider for 5.5 years as a head of services. And I came up with this idea during my work there at HireServe. And do you know what? I convinced myself that somebody is surely already working on this. So I sat on the idea for a couple of years, and that really was around developing a recruitment technology comparison service, a bit like a Go Compare or a Compare the Market, where the user gets a really quick and easy experience where they can actually input their requirements and very quickly and easily find a short list of the best matching vendors in the market. This seemed to me, because the market is so saturated, it seemed to me like a bit of a no-brainer. If you think about when somebody's looking for an ATS, and I know you're going to ask me some questions about this anyway around sort of biggest challenges, this is going to be a really nice segue into that, because I think the biggest challenge that organizations come up against when they're looking for an ATS or a CRM is the sheer volume of applicant tracking system vendors and recruitment CRM vendors in the market. It's a really difficult place to be. I think if you look at someone like, I won't name them, but the leading online directory for leading online technology directory, they list 709 ATS and CRM vendors. So anyone that's in the market for a piece of recruitment tech, they'll look at that and they'll think, well, where do we start? It's not a reasonable number of organizations to be able to actually evaluate and compare, not within a reasonable amount of time anyway. So I wanted to create a tool that made that much quicker and easier. And to do that, I wanted the service to be incredibly impartial. I wanted to make sure that there were absolutely no reasons why we should be steering a client down one road over another. It needs to be based purely on what it is they need and who's the best fit. So it was really difficult, but all of the vendors that we work with, and there's now over 70 ATS and CRM vendors that partner with Rectec, all of those vendors work with us on exactly the same terms so that we can keep that service completely impartial. And that was really, really important for me as well. But yes, the solution itself allows a user to very quickly and easily input their business requirements and get a short list of the best matching vendors. That comes from a database of 180,000 bits of vendor information. And we also serve a key role there as well in validating that information. It takes a lot of time to research the market because the market's so big. And then you also, as a consumer, you place a lot of trust in the vendor that's showing you their product. And typically, when a vendor gives you a demonstration, it's typically 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. So you've got to think about, how can a vendor that has a product that does so much within 60 minutes identify what it is you need and showcase that product to you where you have enough confidence that you want to buy it. And I know sometimes these demos will roll into a second, maybe even a third demonstration in some cases. But how do you really do that and have the confidence to buy the right product without fully evaluating a solution? So part of the service that we provide to our users is actually, when we go through the process of onboarding those vendors into our platform, we validate all of the information they provide. So we give them a tool that allows them to tell us all about their product and their solution. And then through comprehensive functional demonstrations, we validate all of that information so that when somebody runs a search for an ATS or a CRM, we're only ever matching them to technology solutions that we know solve the problems that they're trying to solve.
So kind of nicely segueing into kind of what we're going to discuss today is around the kind of challenges of choosing, deciding upon, implementing ATS or kind of a database within your business. So you've named one of the kind of challenges already around just the sheer volume that's out there. What are the other kind of challenges that you're kind of seeing at the moment around kind of deciding upon a recruitment database?
So I think most organisations that are familiar with the issues they face throughout their own processes, that they know the problems that they're trying to solve, but they won't necessarily understand the range of solutions that have been created to solve those specific problems. They won't know which ones they're likely to get the most value from and which ones are going to be the most cost effective. So my advice here, when it comes to really understanding what it is you need, is essentially making sure that you take the time to fully evaluate the business requirements. You're never going to know what it is you're looking for until you know exactly what it is you need. And typically, I do this with a lot of clients. It's essentially looking at the entire recruitment process. If you're an employer, for example, it would be, from the point where a hiring manager raises a requisition all the way through to the point where you onboard the new employee into the business. What does that process look like? Who's involved in it? What do they, what are the touch points? Where do they interact with the process? And what's the experience like? And I think until you understand every user's experience throughout the entire process, you're not going to know where the gaps are, what are the problems that you're trying to solve. So doing that and actually looking at the process from end to end is a really, really good place to start this, this journey. So your question was, what's the biggest challenge? I think the biggest challenge is really understanding what you need. And the best way to address that is to just take the time to map it out, involve the people that are involved in the process, and get feedback from them. Identify the areas of the process that could be improved. Where, for example, could technology support them in creating efficiencies and saving time, reducing costs, improving user experience, increasing engagement, strengthening their employer brand, and improving diversity? That's just a few things that you should be thinking about. For me, really, a lot of this is about user experience. It's not just about getting somebody from raising a requisition through to getting somebody onboarded into their team. It's also about making sure that people are genuinely engaged with the technology they're using, because if they aren't engaged with that technology, they're simply going to just bypass it, do something manually like they used to because they're more familiar with it. And if you don't trust the technology you're using or the team that are sitting behind that technology, being recruiters or a talent acquisition team, you're not going to be engaged, and that becomes a really vicious circle for HR teams.
And is there any kind of subtleties between the challenges that are faced by, for instance, a recruitment agency as opposed to an in-house team, talent acquisition team, or are they basically the same thing?
No, I think they're different. People always ask me. We get a lot of people, for example, that are looking. Like, there could be a recruitment agency, and they say, "Oh, we're looking for an ATS," and then we get HR organisations that are looking for a CRM, and it's really difficult because that piece itself, there's a huge amount of confusion around ATS and CRM. And the truth is, there are applicant tracking system vendors out there that have some CRM functionality within them. And then there are CRMs out there that have applicant tracking system functionality within them. We try to create a really clear line between applicant tracking systems and recruitment CRMs. And typically, an applicant tracking system is focused on the corporate market, employers that are looking to recruit within their own business. And then recruitment CRMs are focused on organizations that are looking to recruit on behalf of a client. And if you think about the processes that those two organizations follow, it's still a recruitment process, right? But on one hand, you have a defined process that an organization follows to take candidate from application all the way through to onboarding. When you're working in a recruitment agency, you often are following lots of different processes because it's led by the client and how they like to engage with recruitment agencies and how they like to onboard their talent into their business. So that I think the real challenges there are, you've probably got the same considerations around what it is you're trying to do. I mentioned earlier about things like diversity and employer branding and user engagement. I think on a high level basis, they're pretty similar. But I think recruitment agencies probably face a little bit more of a challenge around this because they are not, they're not working on a single recruitment process. For example, they've got to be very accommodating of lots of different clients that they work with.
So what are the kind of mistakes that people are making when they're deciding upon a CRM?
I think the most common one I see is rushing to buy a solution. Every time somebody's looking for a solution, it's urgent. They want it because they realize that it's going to add value, and they want it yesterday. And if they buy a solution without doing the homework first, the likelihood is they're going to end up buying the wrong solution. And the cost of implementing the wrong solution is insurmountable when you think about it. If you think about the time, the effort, the costs that it actually takes to implement a solution, getting it wrong is not really an option. So doing your homework first, like I said earlier, really understanding what you need before you know what it is you're looking for. Do that bit first. Don't rush it. Buying an ATS or a CRM it's a long-term buying decision. Typically, when you buy an ATS or a CRM, you're wearing like a 3 to 5 year hat. You don't really want to be looking for something that you're going to be replacing again in 12 months' time. So you need to be thinking about, what are the likely changes within the business over the next 3 to 5 years, and consult with other people in the business. Have a good understanding of what you need today, but think about how flexible the product might need to be if the business is changing, if it's growing, if it's going through acquisition, for example. It needs to be a flexible solution as well. So you need to be thinking about your long-term business objectives when you go and buy something. And I think a lot of people, they don't do that. And another thing they don't do is they don't ask for recommendations. I see a lot of people that get sold to by ATS or CRM vendors because they've seen shiny bits of functionality that look great, and they build a great relationship with the salesperson or whoever's providing the demonstrations and leading on that relationship from the solution provider's point of view. They're very good at building relationships, and people buy from people, right? It's the same as recruitment. You're going to buy from somebody that you trust, someone that you believe in, someone that you think is showing you the bits of the product that you need. But the fact is, if you know what you need, you can tell them what they need to show you. Because a lot of these applicant tracking systems and recruitment CRMs, they have hundreds of different features. And if you only get, like I said earlier, that sort of 60-minute window to demonstrate a solution, how do you as a solution provider show the areas of the product that particular user is going to get the most value from? Or are you just showing them the bits of the product that you like, that you think going to help you get a sale? Yeah. Showing them maybe the features that your competitors don't have. So they go, oh, well, that makes that particular vendor stand out because they've got something that somebody else doesn't have. But actually, how much value are you going to get from that particular feature? So yeah, for me, it's really about understanding requirements, not rushing, making sure that you get the buying decision right. And also, I think finding out what that provider is like to work with. You need to remember, when you buy a piece of software, you're not just buying the software, but you're actually buying it's a business partnership. You're working with somebody that is not just providing you with a piece of software, but is going to be supporting you day in and day out in making sure that you maximize the value that you get from those tools. They take a great deal of time to implement. And I think the relationships that you have with the organizations you're working with, the vendors in this case, I think the users themselves, or the employees of that business that you're going to be working with, are also critical to the buying decision. You've got to be able to trust them. You've got to be confident that they have a good understanding of your business, and if your business changes, that they're in a position to, provide the right support in the right amount of time to make sure that you continue to always get value from the solution, rather than just selling it to you and stepping back.
Interesting. One of the stats you just kind of mentioned there was that there's a kind of a 3 to 5 year kind of cycle that between. I thought that would have been longer.
It is in many cases. In fact, yeah. I've worked with lots of large public sector organisations, for example, and the initial contract term is 7 years. In many cases, I've seen it longer actually, but that's typically because when you're working in let's say a large council, for example, buying decisions are pretty slow. The cost of implementing something like an ATS is a lot more expensive. The project takes a lot longer. So you've got to be wearing a really long-term hat. If you're a recruitment agency and you're just starting up and there's one or two of you, it's much easier to get 12 months down the line and go, actually, we found a solution that's better. You've got to consider costs. Migrating data from one solution to another is a pretty hefty cost, or can be, especially if you've got tens of thousands of candidates. But actually moving from one solution provider to another, I mean, it is a challenge in itself, and it doesn't matter if you're if you're a small organization or you're a large enterprise or a big public sector organization, there's a cost to re-implementation. So I think if you look at the cost of the implementation initially in terms of not just a monetary value, but timescales, resources, you don't necessarily want to be going through that again in 3 to 5 years' time. It's a little bit easier if you're a smaller organization with a bit more.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I think maybe wondering if those knowing the kind of the volume of smaller recruitment agencies in the UK, that maybe those stats are skewed by that, because those smaller agencies are much more agile,
Yeah, exactly.
and they start with a very kind of one CRM. It's very simple. It's a bit easier to just move from one user over to another one user of another kind of from to another product. I can understand. Yeah, if you're one of the bigger boys and you've got a global kind of rollout, I mean, these things take it can take, I guess, years to kind of do that. And something that I wouldn't if you want to be involved with, in all honesty, because it sounds nightmarish. I've seen it go wrong on too many occasions. Here's a quick question though. What just occurs to me is it, a few years ago, probably kind of 10 to 15 years ago, there was a fashion for recruitment agencies, especially that I worked in. I don't know if this was the same in-house, but to build your own database and build your own CRM. Now, people who aren't watching on the video can, Rob just kind of screwed his nose up, but yeah, no, I can see, I know all the problems because I'd seen it happen on numerous occasions where it went wrong. We don't seem to be there. I guess that is just a product of the market being so broad now and there being so many options that you just don't need to build it yourself.
Exactly, you got it right. I think if you go back 15 years, it might be, especially if you're quite a unique business and you operate in a very unique way, it might be that it's not only challenging right now to find a solution provider, but finding a solution provider that ticks all of those very unique boxes is incredibly tough. So I think this doesn't happen so much anymore. But yeah, 10, 15 years ago, you'd still see people building their own in-house solution. And I'm sure there are still some out there, those organizations perhaps that haven't gone through a great amount of change or growth, and they've managed to maintain that piece of technology that they're using. They might still be using it. But the fact is, I think I mentioned this earlier, if you look at one of the leading online directories, there's 709 ATS and CRM vendors. There's definitely going to be a solution out there that gives you what you need.
That actually sounds, I thought it would be more than that. You know what I mean? It feels there should be more, because there seems to be a new one popping up every week, right?
There are more, but this particular directory does not list every single solution in the market.
Yeah.
But 709 is a substantial number. I wouldn't be surprised if it was well over 1,000. And I know just on the ATS side, there's 450 of those in the UK. And if you think about it, you're going out to market, most of those you would never have heard of. And if you look at those directories, the other thing to remember is that all of the vendors that sit at the top of that list are paying to be there. And I suppose you have to ask yourself the question, are you looking for the right solution, or are you looking for the vendor with the biggest marketing budget? Mm-hmm. I know what my answer would be.
So, I mean, this is a bit of a broad question, and it might be a little bit kind of subjective to, but, what does a good, recruitment database, CRM, ATS look like in 2022? What are the kind of, maybe it can come from a kind of these are the kind of features we should be looking for. This is the kind of service you need to be kind of looking for. But there must be a few things that you think, right, this is what it should do in 2022.
Yeah. For me, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about what a good ATS or a good CRM looks like, it's really about openness to integration. We've focused this call on applicant tracking systems and recruitment CRMs, but there are so many other complementary technologies out there that plug into applicant tracking systems and recruitment CRMs that really, really help to improve the end-to-end journey, and they focus on very specific problems within the within the recruitment process. And it might be that maybe you need a vendor to support you with talent attraction. Maybe you need a vendor to support you with onboarding. Maybe you need a vendor to support you in collecting references or doing background checks. There are so many niche products out there that are designed to solve specific problems, that in order for an ATS vendor or a CRM vendor to give every user exactly what they need, it's got to be their openness to integration. And then you've got tools coming into the market like Zapier, for example. I've been harping on about Zapier for a good 12 months plus now. I think tools like Zapier, and if for those people that are listening that don't know what Zapier is, it is essentially It's an integration tool that allows, I think they've got about 4,000 integrations. So you could basically say, if we wanted to integrate our CRM into our finance system, you can basically just set up what they call a zap, and you go, this is the trigger. And when this happens in this particular platform, do this in this particular platform. That might be creating a record. It might be sending an invoice. So it's really sophisticated, but really quick and easy for people that aren't technical to use.
Mm-hmm.
And that means, for example, if you're using a particular solution for your applicant tracking, but you use something else for collecting references, for example, or you use an external service provider, when a candidate hits a certain status in the recruitment process, trigger off this particular engagement or interaction with another platform. Doing that gives the end user the ability to be able to look at the wider market, and not just what can an ATS or a CRM give to the business, but how can we actually work with lots of different organizations to make sure that we're absolutely maximizing the efficient, getting the best efficiency out of what we're doing, reducing costs, and really getting as much value from technology as possible. And I think integration is absolutely key to that. And I've seen that over the last 5 years or so. I've seen ATS and CRM vendors spending a huge amount of time on building out their integration partners. I mean, if you look at, I didn't really want to name any names, but if you look at organizations like Job Adder, for example, they've got something like 300 or 400 integrated solutions. If you look at organizations on the ATS side, like Smart Recruiters, for example, similar number. They've got teams focused on building these integrations all day, every day, to make sure that people that use their product get exactly what they need, even if it means working with third parties. And I think it's becoming more and more common.
It must be crazy for the actual CRM providers, and we have had one or two on here that there's also so many integrations you could do, right? That's the problem as well. There's just the eco structure around kind of ATS and CRM with all these other kind of complementary tools that could potentially plug in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of mind-boggling, because if you've got in the thousands of CRMs, then you've probably got in the thousands of other tools that could potentially plug into it. It must be an absolute nightmare. If you own and build CRMs, then it must be an absolute nightmare deciding what are we going to plug into and what we aren't going to plug into, or what's our development plan for all of this.
And it's one of the reasons why within our own product, within Rectec Compare, we built a marketplace of complementary technology solutions. And we're currently working on a new phase of development that's going to be linking all of the ATS and CRM vendors that we work with and the vendors that they're integrated with to our marketplace. So that organizations that are looking for an ATS or a CRM, but they need more, they'll actually be able to see all of the same, all of the same value from a showcase of those complementary technology providers as well. And that is something we're actively working on. I think it's going to be game changing in terms of what we're doing.
Yeah, that's cool. Again, those are the kind of tech that just they're coming along and being bought up almost instantaneously at the minute. So it's a crazy market at the moment out there.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, last question, Rob, before I let you go, is what does the kind of ATS CRM recruitment database look like in 5 or 10 years' time? We know what it should be doing now. It's integration. What should it be doing in the future?
I'm going to stick on the same subject, and I'm going to say that this whole integration focus, I think, will continue, and I think people will probably shift away from just buying a CRM or just buying an applicant tracking system, and actually, when they go to market, they'll be going to market for an integrated solution. In 5 years' time, I predict that people won't be buying a single product. I think they'll be buying concurrently at the same time. Instead of going into one contract with an ATS provider or a CRM provider, they'll be going into 5 contracts, and all of those solution providers will be fully integrated. That's where I think we're going.
I can see people out there kind of squirming. It's like, I've got to sign 5 contracts all at the same time. I've got to sign up to these things. But yeah, I mean, it seems rational that you would want to kind of buy an ecosystem for your business, right? And be able to go, right, we're going to have this as the ATS, we're going to have that as the talent attraction thing, we're going to have that as the onboarding, we're going to have that as whatever else it needs to do. And you kind of buy them all, kind of, and it all kind of as soon as you kind of take it on, it's already plugged in and ready to go. Basically, everything else is kind of working.
Well, the whole integration piece is getting quicker and easier. So typically, what most people will do is they go and make their decision around what applicant tracking system or what recruitment CRM we're going to buy, and then they look at what are the options in terms of extending that reach through integration. And it's very limited by what that particular applicant tracking system vendor has done in terms of integrating to those solution providers. And there's a difference here between a direct integration and having an API that anybody can go and tap into. But there's always going to be time and cost involved in building an integration. So, tools like Zapier, for example, that make that much, much quicker and easier are going to become a lot more common. And I think when you go and make those buying decisions down the line, I mean, it takes seconds to go and look at, if you just type in an applicant tracking system vendor into a tool like Zapier, it's going to tell you straight away which other tools are integrated with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the way that it's going to go. It's going to get quicker and easier to integrate, and therefore you won't necessarily need to buy one and the others follow. I think it will be more of a combined buying decision of that ecosystem you mentioned.
Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. We will obviously include all of your details in the show notes. So if anybody wants to kind of get in contact or know more about you and Rectec, they can obviously kind of do it from there. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.